Well, good morning, Ponderers. How are you out there in Pondering Land? There we go. That's a better view. Decided to do the show outside today in the park. It is just a gorgeous morning. And so Coda and I are out here. He is here somewhere. I don't know where he went to. He's wandering around. But he is doing his thing. He doesn't go far. So, there he is. You can see him in the background way over there. I'll give you a little view of what I'm looking at. This is parked down to the corner near our home. And woods out here behind the housing development. We come down here every day, actually probably twice a day and most days. Coda does his business in the woods over here. And then we just chill, as he's doing right now. Sometimes bring the grandkids down here. This is a great quiet place, and we enjoy it. It's very close to our house, probably a block away. So kind of a little morning sanctuary for us. And I decided to just bring you with me today on the Pondering podcast. It's Free-for-all-Friday, so anything goes, including location, right? There you go. So enjoy. We'll give you a little more of a view in a minute. Maybe we'll walk around. We'll see how it goes. But it's Free-for-all-Friday. Welcome to Pondering, all of you Ponderers. Of course, if you're joining us for the first time here live on the live stream on Facebook, or if you're joining us via podcast on multiple venues, we welcome you. If you're listening to us on demand any other time of day, you can still participate by jumping onto the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. That's facebook.com/Pondering Radio, like one word. Just type in, I just noticed we got Coda in the background doing his business. That's not an attractive view. Sorry. Just type in your comments 24/7, 365. We would love to hear from you. You can also type an email. You can send us an email, ponderingradio@gmail.com. What else can you do? You can call us at 860-500-7163, 860-500-7163, and leave a message. We'll listen to it. We may play it on the air. We'll see how things go. We would love to hear your thoughts and your comments. This week is pretty much over. That's crazy, isn't it? We're at Friday already. But here's the deal on Fridays. You can bring up any topic you want. You can talk about anything you want. You can talk about your weekend plans. You can talk about how your week went. You can talk about your favorite color, why you like puppies. I don't care. It's okay. It's Free-for-all Friday. There's no guests today. There are no guests, plural today. There is no guest. There are no guests. There is no theme or subject that we're focused on. Oh, no. Anything goes. The topics, they just flows, baby. And you can bring up whatever you like. Of course, we also today do Flash Friday, where you throw something at me and I have to respond instantaneously, just like that, off the top of me head, where the hat is right now. Do a little free advertising for Cabela's. It's okay. And yeah, that's good. It keeps my gray matter functioning appropriately and properly. So, here comes the dog. There he is. All right, so yeah. So that's the day. Listen, next week we'll give you a little bit more of a rundown, probably on Monday. We do know for sure that we have John Van Patella on Thursday. We have Tom Hansen on Wednesday. We will, of course, as always, do Free-for-all Friday. Monday and Tuesday are up in the air right now. I am not 100% sure, but we will, work that out over the weekend and bring you an update, an overview. Yeah. Brenda says, did you bring a doggy bag? Yes. Yeah, I know. I think I have one in the car. I usually do have one in my back pocket. Let's see who all has said good morning. Brenda, Sarah, Susie, anyone else I missed? Carl here is with us, I think. Welcome aboard. Great to have you along for the ride today. So lots going on out there in the world. Lots going on in the news. Enjoyed yesterday's discussion. And some of the other conversations I've had rolling this week on Facebook, too. Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, PJ, Coda, and those who ponder the ponderable. Yes, and sometimes the imponderable, too. We do that occasionally also, don't we? So I don't know what's on your mind this fine day. This weekend we have some exciting plans. Let me give a plug for our sponsors, including Lifeway Church. A lot happening at Lifeway. We are gearing up for our, what are we calling it? I guess night of worship now. Night of worship Wednesday night. We'll have a worship and prayer night. Just free-flowing worship. We'll have several beautiful songs we're working on that I think you'll love, just as a foundation on which to build as we pray and seek God's presence together. That'll be Wednesday night at 7. I'm not sure if that'll be live streamed, but it will definitely be live at 2172 Berlin Turnpike. As will 2 services on Sunday. I'll be preaching the subject on Sunday, part of our series, I'd like to believe, but where we talk about some of the objections to Christianity. And this week, we're talking about the question of whether or not God is a killjoy God. Is God just all about trying to ruin your life, make you miserable, restrict you left, right, and center? He doesn't like you to have fun. He doesn't want you to be happy. He's just giving you a bunch of rules, taking away all the things in life that really make it worth living, as some would say or think. And I'm going to address that head on in the old sermon on Sunday. We have 2 services, 9:30 and 11:15 a.m. You can watch them live stream at Lifeway's Facebook page, Lifeway Church Facebook page. You can also watch them later at lifewaych.com, and you can find out more about the church at lifewaych.com. And we show you the whole thing when we live stream. You get the worship, you get the message, you get the announcement, the whole shebang. So yeah, chime in, and if you're in the neighborhood, again, 9:30, 11:15 a.m., 2172 Berlin Turnpike. Y'all come. We'd love to see you. Got a hug for you. So that'll be this weekend, and we're working on all that stuff. I am working on that stuff. I'm singing, playing drums, and preaching Sunday, so twice. So that will be a full day, to say the least. Tomorrow, bunch of stuff happening. I've got to work a little bit in the morning, and hopefully get some stuff cleaned up around the yard. We got a mess to deal with. Hopefully I'll get to that. I don't know. The office work may take precedence. We'll see how that goes. But then in the evening, we are babysitting. So we have the kiddos, and I'm looking forward to that. I haven't seen the grandkids much this week. Been too busy. So this will be really fun to be able to spend some time with them. So I'd love to hear about your plans as well. Brenda says, how are you going to lose weight that way? LOL. Yeah. Which way? You mean doing all that stuff? Hopefully that helps me lose weight. I don't know. But no live stream for the event Wednesday night, Sarah says. Okay, well, that's okay. Yeah, it'll be all right. If you can come, y'all come. 7 o'clock Wednesday. By the way, don't forget, if you're interested in our study on Daniel, which will start the first Wednesday in June, coming up real fast now, less than 2 weeks away, email us, ponderingradio@gmail.com or joel@lifewaych.com, and we will send you a Zoom link so that you can zoom right in there and join in and participate. Oh, look who's back. Hey, buddy, you're famous. So yeah, that's coming up soon too, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Also, you mentioned weight loss. Yes, I am still on the Compass Fat Loss Program. Lost 12 pounds so far. Had a rough day yesterday. I kind of cheated yesterday. Somebody brought carrot cake to work, and that's just evil. I'm sorry, it's just evil. I don't know that may be the unpardonable sin. I'm not sure. And it was the best carrot cake I've ever eaten in my life, too, by the way, too. It wasn't like that super sweet frosting where you kind of go after you eat it. No, this was just right. I didn't eat a lot. I just had a sliver. But, yeah. Anyway. But I still did okay. Lost the pound, so we're good. Driving to the park. Oh, yes, right. 1 block away, yes. I got it now, Brenda. Yeah, how'd you know I drove? Usually I walk. But I drove today because maybe I said that and I forgot. It was just because of time. I was running late to get the show started. So, yeah. Compass Fat Loss, though, is another sponsor of the show. Check them out. CompassFatLoss.com. CompassFatLoss.com. All the high-tech gadgetry you could want to track everything and keep track of, your exercise program if you want to do that. That's optional. But also your body fat percentage, hydration, body mass index, and, of course, your weight. And they will be in touch with you instantaneously, 24/7, 365, via the Compass Fat Loss app. So check them out. Real food, not powders and shakes and bars and junk. Um, oh, my dog has brought me a tree branch. Hey, thank you, bud. All right. Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. I don't know exactly what he ever expects me to do with this. It's too big to throw. But he does like to wrestle. So I will do that while I'm talking. He thinks I think that this is good stuff when we try to get it away from him, and he becomes extremely ferocious, frightening small children and squirrels. But anyway, uh, I'm jiggling all over because he's tugging on it now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Vicious beast. Call 911. So, good morning, Leanne. Great to have you along for the ride. So check out Compass Fat Loss. I think you'll like the program. You can talk to them, get a free consultation, and you can do it anywhere on the planet. But certainly if you're in Connecticut, they have offices in Glastonbury, and I think, is it Stratford? I forget what the other office is, but you'll see that at the website. Learn more about the program. Hey, if you can lose a few pounds, it's always good to do so. Most of us can afford to do so. All right, there we go. I threw it. I don't know how I threw it. It's huge. Actually, for Coda, that's a small one. He does often bring me trees. You'll see the brush rustling, and then you crunch, crash, smash, and out he comes with this thing, and you're like, are you kidding me right now? I mean, exactly what am I going to do with it? I can't even lift it. So I have such a tiny little puppy, He's just a little baby. He's a beast. Anyway, so Free-for-all-Friday. Here we are. What's on your mind, Ponderers? Let's do this. Let's talk. Shall we talk? What's on your mind? Give me something. Hit me with something, a topic, a subject, a thought. We'll do the Flash Friday thing. Let's just go to that. Unless you want to talk about your weekend plans, which I'm fine with. Hit me with a thought, a theme, a subject, and I, your host, will respond immediately. All right, let's go. What you got? Let's go. Get the brain matter going. Hit me with your best shot. Okay. And while you're thinking and or typing, I will comment on a couple things that have been in the news. I am amazed, and I know we've talked about this in different ways from different angles, but without getting into the details and the weeds, like we often do, I just want to say that if anyone ever needed proof that the devil is real and that he is the author of confusion and that he is the father of lies and that, as Revelation says, the serpent deceives the whole world, we have it today just with a cursory brush of the news. The fact that our Congress is seriously considering trying to impeach our president with no evidence of any crime, any wrongdoing, or any legal, rational reason is, to me, just proof of deception and insanity. Now, you might say, I know that's a political thought, Pastor Joel. I don't think it is. I'm independent. I am conservative, so I tend to like Donald Trump's policies and approach. I admit that, and you know that. If you watch the show for more than 5 minutes, you figure that out. But honestly, I try to be objective. If I step away from this and just forget about policy and politics and anything, I just look at it and say, okay, if I was a citizen of another country and I'm watching what's happening in the United States, and here's a president who has committed no crime, who after 2 years of investigation with a team of people that hate him running the investigation, millions of dollars spent, hundreds of witnesses interviewed. The report comes back, no collusion with Russia, which was the original reason for the inquiry and the whole process, and no evidence to convict of any kind of cover-up or obstruction of justice. Now, here's the irony about that. Legally, I guess technically, it is possible to obstruct justice when there's no crime. I thought initially, and this is a little bit of a gray area in the law as I understand it, Let me put it this way: most of the time, when there's an obstruction of justice uh, crime or conviction, it's because there has been a crime committed and somebody's trying to cover it up. There's evidence of a crime. There's prosecution pending on a crime, and somebody tries to hide it or get in the way of law enforcement or mislead them or whatever. Um, it's almost never that somebody gets accused of, and certainly I think rare, if not impossible, to get convicted of obstruction of justice when there is no crime. But if someone's investigating, they think there's a crime, and you just try to block it, and it turns out there wasn't a crime, technically, yes, you're still guilty. But here's the thing: with the executive branch of our government, they don't have to give over documents. They don't have to go for interviews. They don't have to cooperate in a number of ways. They can execute executive privilege, as President Obama did during the Fast and Furious inquiry into the gun sales to gangs in Mexico that ended up killing an ATF agent. And when they asked for the documents and the emails and so forth about this whole process of giving weapons to these people, he claimed executive privilege, and they never saw the documents. President Trump could have done that. He didn't do that. But because a president can do it, it seems like obstructing or being convicted of obstruction is pretty hard, if not impossible. So in this case, you've got no crime. In other words, there's no collusion. You've got no real evidence of obstruction. And if you did, you could argue that he could have done it by executive privilege. He didn't have to cooperate. Of course, he did cooperate. But anywhere he didn't, such as now when he's telling people, don't testify anymore, enough of this, let's stop it. They're claiming that's obstruction. He's got executive privilege law behind him. He doesn't have to cooperate. So I'm looking at this going, they're going to impeach him for nothing. I mean, literally nothing. Now, with President Clinton, there was a clear crime. He lied under oath, said he didn't have sex with Monica Lewinsky. Then it came out, the evidence showed he did. And, that was perjury, right? In this case, there's no crime. And there's really no cover-up because you can't cover up if you have executive privilege. So they're pursuing with great passion. And actually, they said the other day in the news, one of the Democratic leaders said, if we impeach, we might find out what he did. What? That's like saying, I'll pick on Leanne. I'm going to arrest Leanne and put her on trial because maybe in the trial we'll find out if she did anything wrong. Wow. What happened to presumed innocent till proven guilty? I think we lost that somewhere. So in terms of insanity, confusion, deception, clear influence of the enemy on our culture, there are a lot of ways we could look at that and see it, but I've never in my lifetime witnessed it more in a broader base, obvious way than this. This is insane. Clearly, the author of confusion is at work. So those are just something I've been thinking about just many times as I'm going about life and I see things happening. I think, well, there's proof. If you doubt there's a devil. I was reading this morning in my devotions about a missionary that had done some work he was a UN representative who had done some work in Uganda. And, just horrible atrocities have happened in Uganda. And he had witnessed them, and he said, I didn't used to believe in God, but now I do, because I've seen the devil. I've smelled him. I've shook his hand. I've walked in the darkness next to him. And he's talking about, poetically speaking, being in Uganda and seeing the human evil, the inhuman evil that was done there. So, if you ever doubted there was a devil, just read the New York Times for 5 minutes. All right, let's see what we got. A couple things. Yet Hillary is still walking around free. Yeah, we may wind up in civil war. I fear that, but I don't think that's as far-fetched as some might think. Because there are still sane, moral people who look at this and go, no, we are not a communist regime. We don't do coup d'etats. We are a democratic republic. We vote people in and out. We don't run them out with no reason, just because we don't like their policies. And so you never know. I hope not. Certainly not violence. We don't want to see that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Susie says, weekend plans, working on red, white, and blue lap gans for hospice. Oh, thank you. Awesome. Yeah, Susie and her ministry team make lap gans, comfort blankets, prayer shawls for people in our hospice program. And every time we bring one out, everybody on the team is, oh, wow, that's beautiful. Oh, that's amazing. So they really love to receive those. Thank you so much. We've also set an influx. Yes, Julie, our volunteer coordinator for hospice, has said that there's an influx of vets, and that's true. We have a lot of veterans right now. Going to have to hit Joann's for more yarn. Now that my hands have pretty much healed, I can crochet for longer times. That's awesome. Yeah, thank God for that, because I know you went through surgery and all kinds of stuff. Oh, Sarah's thrown something at me for Flash Friday. Thank you, Sarah. She says, having community. Ooh, I like that. So, community is a word that gets thrown around a lot in culture and in the church. And I think it has some common threads, but different meaning to people. We speak of our community, often we think of our town, or the surrounding towns, our surrounding area. Some would say community meaning a group of people with the same sexual preference, like the LGBTQ community is supposed to be a group. Now, I've always found that interesting because, quite honestly, they may have obviously a common cause to get legislation passed to allow them to dress and drag at work, or to show affection in public, or have sanctioned marriage between the same-sex marriage, that kind of thing. They may have common purpose or cause in fighting their battles that way. But in terms of just hanging out and being the same, those groups are not all the same, and don't necessarily have other things in common, per se. So I've always found that an interesting use of the term community. But that's another word that's thrown out there, the LGBTQ community, for example. Someone will say race is a community, the black community, the Hispanic community. Again, in some ways, when people say that, it's a racist comment. Think about it. They're saying that all black people are alike, ergo they have a community because of their skin color. That's not true. I've worked with African blacks, I've worked with island blacks, I've worked with Haitian blacks, I've worked with American black families and individuals. They are not all the same. In Africa, there are different tribes. We might think they look the same. We might speak of them as a Namibian community, for example, but they're not a community. And they would reject that statement because they don't necessarily get along or like people from other tribes in every case. So the term really needs definition, doesn't it, when we use it? In the church, I think what we mean when we talk about having community is getting together around the common cause of Christ. And that's not to say that any of those other communities don't have a common cause or purpose. But with us, it's more than just cause, isn't it? It's cause, it's a mission, it's a purpose to reach the one, as we say at Lifeway, who's far from God, reach the one who's far from God, connect them to God, to others in that relational community, and also with the world at large, to bring others to Him. The common cause is huge, but it's not just cause. We are connected by spirit, which is thicker than blood or water. They always say blood is thicker than water. Well, spirit's thicker than both, because the Holy Spirit lasts, doesn't He? He is eternal, and our community with Him, our communion with Him, being part of us, draws us together. I remember Ralph Neighbor years ago in his books would say, or he had a radio show, I think, for a while too, he would say, the Christ in me greets the Christ in you. We have the presence of God in us, which unites us as one, not just in purpose, but in person, in terms of our identity. And so for Christians, having community is our common purpose. It's our common faith and belief. It's our common goal of maturing in Him. But it's also, in a metaphysical, supernatural way, it's a bond that God has created in us that we celebrate when we come together, and we do things together, whether it's studying the Bible, praying, hanging out, having coffee. Having community for us is celebrating the reality that we are one in Christ. As Paul said, we should do everything, endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. And then he goes through this litany. There's one God, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God who is what is above all, over all, and in all. I think he says in you all, and I used to joke that proved that Paul was from the South. Above all, through all, and in y'all. But anyway, that's my thought on having community, that for us it's deeper. It's not just a common purpose and then everything else is different. We don't care about each other except when we're fighting for legislation to support our cause. It's not just that we have the same skin tone. It's not just that we have, because we have such diversity in the body of Christ, don't we? It's not having one language even. It's beyond all that. It's a purpose in Christ. It's the person of Christ. It's the power of the Spirit in us and the bonding of His presence. I look around sometimes at church and I think, isn't it funny that we're together? I mean, from a human, physical perspective, we would look at the church and go, why are these people hanging out? I mean, you got old, young, fat, thin, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. You got people who have great economic status and might be wealthy, and you have people who are dirt poor right off the street. You got everything, and yet we're together, and we hug each other, and we laugh, and we worship, and we do things, and we have mission together, but we also hang out for fun together. We learn together. What is it that makes that a community? It's our belief, it's our purpose, but it's the person of Christ in us, that bond that no one can break, that goes beyond anything physical. And I think that's pretty cool. When we come together, we're just celebrating that. Hopefully we're remembering that, and hopefully we're maintaining that. Sadly, we forget that sometimes. And we think that our unity has more to do with our building or, our common interest in a certain kind of worship music or our, some physical preference, which it is so not any of that. In fact, I've had unity with people sitting on a log in the bush in Africa that brought tears to my eyes when I didn't even speak their language, but I felt the presence of God and knew we were one. That, guys, is not a human thing, and it goes far beyond. I didn't like the log. That was not my favorite place to sit. I don't like heat, and it was 100 degrees. I don't like, there's a lot of things I could say would have pushed me away from that, but you couldn't pry me away feeling the presence of God and the common bond of faith in that environment. So, yeah, having community is a beautiful thing. We need to celebrate it, and we need to recognize it for what it truly is. So there we go. Let's see. Susie says purple. Oh, yeah, when I was going through the colors, I just got it. Susie has purple hair. So, yes, we even have the purple among us. Can I just give you a quick aside? Years ago, there was a seminar in New York I went to. How to have a diverse church was actually, I didn't go for that purpose. It was like a series of teachings about church leadership and stuff. And one of the presenters talked about how to have a diverse church. And as he's talking, I'm listening, I'm going, yeah, I have that, but I'm not going to do what he's suggesting. He was suggesting that to have a diverse church, you need to have 1 week where you're kind of like a black church, and then another week where you're like a Hispanic church, and 1 week where you do stuff for this community and that group, and then another thing, and then you have an outreach with this. And I went, no, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not how we had a diverse church. That's not how it happened for us. We just love the community at large. We just love the people in our area. We just treat everybody the same and give them the same message and hope. And what I found over the years is when you do that, you reflect the town, city, community that you live in, right? To use that term. If you live in a town where, let's get down to brass tacks numbers. You have 10% that are Hispanic, maybe 20% that are black, 5% that are Asian, the rest are white. Well, if you love that community openly and freely and you serve everybody, you're probably going to find over time that your church is 10% Hispanic, 20% black, 5%, Asian, and the rest will be white. It's not because you're bigoted and you only reach the majority of white people because you hate everybody else. It's because that's what your community is like, and you love everybody the same. I don't ordain people, for example, because of their skin tone. I know some churches get into that. Well, we need to have a diverse board, so let's make sure that no, you love everybody, you treat everybody the same, you preach the same word, you have the same principles and criteria for leadership, and again, you will probably, over time, not only in your church body, but in your leadership team, reflect the way your community looks, the city, the town you live in. And that's the way it ought to be, in my opinion. I know there are churches that are black and they reach more black people, and there are churches that are Asian and they reach more Asian people, and sometimes Sunday morning is the most segregated day of the week. I'm not sure that's always good. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. Now, if we're talking language, that's different. If people speak Korean, they need a worship service in Korean. I'm not the church for ours is not the church for that. We can't do that. And you say, well, we could translate. Well, we could, but if you tried to translate for every ethnic group that exists, you'd never be able to have a service, or you'd have to have such high-tech equipment and a whole booth of translators and a soundproof booth to give them the sermon in their language or whatever. And I don't think that's necessary. We can have churches with different language. That's all good. But apart from those kind of barriers, we should just reflect what our town looks like, and that's okay. All right, those just an aside. Jim says, greetings from San Francisco. Oh, my goodness. Frangioso. San Frangioso. Yeah, I love you, Jim. Hey, what are you doing out there, dude? That's cool. I love San Francisco. I left my heart in San Francisco. I don't like its politics, but I love the scenery. I love the salty sea smell off the ocean. I love the wharf. What do they call it? Walrus Wharf or whatever they call it, where all the seals hang out. I think that's cool. I love the trolley cars. It's just a lot of cool stuff. The hilly roads up and down through the city. Somebody has not given up on his quest here to have a wrestling match. Look at this. He is still going at it over there. Yeah. Oh, R&R. Good for you, man. Yeah, no, San Fran is cool. There's so much to do. And, of course, if you like seafood, and you can go out and tour Alcatraz. I was in San Francisco with a family years ago. We actually camped our way out there and across and down the coast. And we had our camper, this big camper, we're towing behind our minivan, and we're trying to. Oh my God! I'm being attacked right now. Sorry. Oh, vicious dog! You are vicious. People at home are going to be terrified. They'll never watch the show again. Okay, sorry. I digress. We were towing a camper on the minivan, and I think the GPS gave me a turn, and I turned, and what I was on, I didn't realize what I was turning on. It was one of those steep, windy roads down to the ocean, and I mean, I didn't think I'd stop. I thought my brakes were going to give out because I got all this weight behind me, and we're jig, 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 jig. We're like, hang on, kids, we're going for a ride. And it was like those videos, where they show you the trolley rides up and down the hills of San Francisco, and you're like, whoa. Well, that was what it was like, except that we were driving, towing the camper and praying for God's intervention that we would actually be able to stop. Anyway, so have a good time out there, Jim. Get some rest. You're a good man. You deserve it. Susie says, Mad Dog. Yes, Mad Dog Coda. Oh, well, not anymore. We have decided that the tree branch makes a good bed, apparently. So he is now resting, and so can I. So what else you got for me, Ponderers? Hit me with something else. We got time. Yeah, we're doing good. So we covered having community. Good one, Sarah. I like that. What else you got? Come on now. Give me something. Hit me with your best shot. I'm going to start getting that theme music together. We need to use that. Look at that. I have sound effects now, by the way, in the show. Let's see, what else do I have? I have several sound effects. I can tell a good joke, you know. Let's see. So I grabbed the Easter Bunny by the ears and picked him up and yelled at him. You know what it was for him? A hair-raising experience. Hold on. Wait. Oh, no, my laugh track. There it goes. There you go. I have a laugh track. I've got all kinds of things. A bell ringing, lightning bolt, thunder, lightning. Yeah. I don't know what this is. This is supposed to be some weird thing. I guess that's supposed to be like, you know, if I say something really astounding, I can hit that. So on the podcast, we'll have lots of sound effects once we get things up and running. You don't laugh at my jokes, it's okay. I have a laugh track. There you go. All right, what else you got for me, guys? Come on. Hit me with something here. It's Flash Friday, Free-for-all Friday. Anything goes. The topics just flow. You give me something. I will respond to your inquiry. I just thought of Inspector Clouseau and the Pink Panther. I probably told you this, but I had a roommate, Robbie, who we had a dorm room on the first floor at college, and people used to walk right by on their way down to the student center or other places, and they'd take their dates when they have a dance or some event. Even if they were going off campus, they'd often walk by us to get off and then head down to a couple restaurants in town, including one of my all-time favorites, the Salt Shaker. Karen and I had many wonderful hours on dates at the Salt Shaker to get a milkshake and whatever. So anyway, Robbie used to hang his head out the window. Well, actually, he would just sit by the window, and when he saw a couple walking by, you know, heading down to wherever, some date, they'd be going by, you know, arm in arm, and he would wait till they got right next to the window, and he'd pop out, and he did the greatest, oh my gosh, Inspector Clouseau imitation of the world. If we put a trench coat on him and a hat, I mean, he was, a mustache too, I guess, he was the Pink Panther. I mean, seriously. So he'd wait for him to get right next to the window, and he'd pop his head out the window, and he'd say, "Do you have a lessons for that minke?" Just like in the movie, they'd say, "What? Do you have a lessons for that minke?" And then he'd slam the window. And, you know, it took a minute for him to realize what he had said, and then they'd get mad. But it was fun. All right. Leanne says, how do you respond when people criticize Christians for saying Jesus is the one way to heaven? Lots of attacks out there for not agreeing. It's just one of many ways. Oh, great one, Leanne. And I encounter this all the time as a chaplain, too, because it's funny. Chaplaincy agencies, medical groups, any kind of service organization, even churches, not so much the evangelical, but some of the more liberal mainline churches are definitely getting sucked into this ecumenical idea that it's true that we all worship the same God, and there's just many paths to the same God, and it ignores the law of non-contradiction that philosophically goes back to Plato, and we've talked about this on the show before. You know, I think it was Plato who said that two ideas can't both be right if they contradict each other. One could be right, the other wrong, or both could be wrong, but they cannot possibly both be right. And this is just a logical, absolute basis for good dialogue and debate and philosophical pondering, right? It makes sense. And I always have used the example, if I say we're north of Hartford, you say we're south of Hartford, we can't both be right. We could both be wrong. One of us could be right, the other wrong. We cannot both be right. That just is a logical impossibility. Well, when it comes to religion, we suddenly throw that out, and we say somehow, mystically, at some spiritual, supernatural level, some organization or belief or religion that says there are 3.1 million gods, like Hinduism, the different branches of Hinduism, and a religion like Judaism that says there's one God, you know, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. They are somehow mystically the same. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's absurd. They say a religion like Islam that says kill the infidel, you know, if you can't convert him, kill him. And a religion like Christianity that says do good to those who despitefully use you, love your enemies. Those are the same. Well, they are not the same. They don't end up the same way. They don't have the same fruit and results. They are completely different. If you doubt that, look at Congressman Irma. What's her last name? The Muslim hijab-wearing congresswoman who is constantly spewing anti-Semitic comments. She is not the same as a Christian who says, no, we don't agree. The Jews have missed it in terms of the Messiah, but they are, we are spiritual Israelites by faith in Jesus. We need to support them. They're God's people. We want to help that nation and those people. Or we want to stand with them. Those are not the same. Those, those philosophies are completely different. But we want to pretend they are somehow the same so we can all get along. Pretending does not make for good community. Pretending to get along does not make one unified. So anyway, but that is the cultural norm right now, Leanne. You're absolutely right, and everybody thinks that's the way it is. So depending on who I'm talking to, I point out a few things. First of all, when it comes to my job as a chaplain and people pushing that the chaplains need to be able to be all things to all men, not in the way Paul meant it, but in the sense of being Hindu one minute, Muslim the next minute, Jewish the next minute, I say no. Here's the thing. 95% of the people in New England that I deal with as a chaplain, as a pastor, etc., are Christian. They're either Catholic or Protestant, but they're Christian. So right there, 95% of the people I deal with would not be offended to find out that I believe in Jesus. Right? I don't have to pretend. I don't have to hide. I don't have to morph into something else because they will not be offended if I mention his name. Ironically, many of them, the liberal side of Christianity, are the ones paranoid about mentioning him because somebody else might be offended or think we're isolationist or whatever. The people that get most exercise about this, Leanne, when we look at it, are often, I'll say Christians, at least is how they self-identify. Hey, there's a good politically correct term. You see how I did that right there? Self-identify. They may never go to church, and they don't know what they believe necessarily, but they think they're Christian. They say they're Christian. Those people are the ones panicked about, oh my gosh, don't mention Jesus. Typically not the Jewish people, typically not the Hindus. Hindus and Buddhists don't care. They believe in everything. They don't care. Even Muslims don't often care if they're liberal Muslims because they see Jesus as a good man, a prophet. They don't mind if you mention him. It's the Christians, liberal Christians, who are paranoid about mentioning him. So I'll sometimes point that out in a gentle, loving way that, realistically, most people around us here are not offended by the fact that I'm a Christian chaplain or pastor. They're just not. Having said that, I love everybody equally. I treat them all the same, and I tell them that too. I love and care for and try to encourage and support Muslims who might be dying, Jews who might be dying, Buddhists who might be dying. It's the same thing, right, as a hospice chaplain. But I don't pretend to be what I am not in order to love them. People see right through that anyway. And at some point they go, what's the point of having you here? You don't believe in anything. You're just pretending. And that doesn't work. You have to be sincere. You have to have faith. You have to have confidence in who you are. You have to have love, but you got to be honest too. So I don't push it on them. I don't beat them over the head. I don't try to convert them if they're not interested, not asking questions. But I do care for them, love them, and I don't pretend to be something I'm not. So I tell people all that if they'll listen, if they're really interested. In terms of people that just having the philosophical argument about, or discussion, maybe not argument, about that, saying Jesus is the only way, many times I'll point out that he's the one who said it. That we didn't come up with that. Evangelical Christians didn't decide Jesus was the only way, therefore we want to hate everybody else somehow, which is the argument that liberals make, isn't it? That we hate everybody because we say Jesus is the only way, and yet somehow that's not true, they say. The United Church of Christ has taken this position that, he is not the only way, he's a way. And to say he's the way is hate speech. Well, then Jesus is a hater, because John 14:6 is where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, the life, right? No one comes to the Father except through me. So clearly, come here, Coda. Come here. If anybody's a hater, come here, Coda, come. Right here to me. Excuse me, folks. I have a little problem here. Come here. Right here. Nope. Come over here. That's a boy. That's a good boy. Yeah, he's right here with Daddy. There's another dog, guys. Sorry. So I am holding him. Normally I don't, and he's good, but I just don't want anybody to panic. You can see him over there, but they're walking, man and his dog, and I don't want them to be scared of this big black beast running their way. Oh, he's got two dogs over there. I see. So, yeah, I'll point out that Jesus said it. He's the one who said, I'm the way, the truth, the life. We didn't come up with that. He did. And in order to say otherwise, to argue against that, you'd have to contradict him. Now, some liberal Christians do that. They say, well, that was John's opinion. That's not Jesus' real words. John misunderstood. Or they'll say maybe that's not credible, but the rest of the story is. And then if you're talking to a Christian who says that, you have to really question then, where do you gain your source of truth? What do you use to build your faith? And I would ask them that, because it can't be the Bible. Because if they're going to say, well, this piece I don't agree with, I heard a pastor one time here in town quote that verse, but edit it in a funeral. And most people didn't know the verse, so they're just going, oh, yeah, okay. And I'm sitting there steaming. I mean, smoke is coming out my ears. If it weren't a funeral, I might have been tempted to object out loud. It was like, what? He didn't agree with it, so he changed it. That was right here in Newington. You have to ask him, well, what then is your source? If you're going to smorgasbord the Bible, what parts do you decide to believe in? And who made you the arbiter of what's true and not true? I mean, if you're going to do that, you must just make up your own religion and forget Christianity altogether. What is it? Years ago, people were on the internet worshiping the flying spaghetti god or something crazy, silly thing. Well, yeah, you might as well. But if you believe the Bible's inspired, you believe God wrote it, you believe it's without error in the original manuscripts, like we do as evangelicals, then when Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, the life, that's his word. Those are his. And sometimes too, to be fair, people get upset when we say that, or they hear us quote that verse, because they emotionally feel it's unfair. And let's think that through for a minute. They'll say, well, what about the Aborigines, tribesmen, who's only known, paganism. He's only known, different African or cultural religions. He's known animism. He's worshipped objects and trees and spirits of many kinds. He's going to go to hell, then you're saying, because he didn't hear about Jesus, and that's only because a missionary never made it to him. Well, on the surface, that sounds awful and horrible, and oh my gosh, it makes you feel guilty for saying Jesus is the only way. But when you look at the scripture in total, and then you compare it to history, the last 2,000 years or more, and you kind of think it through, as we do on Think It Through Thursday. This might be a good topic for us to tackle some Thursday. You realize, no, that's not unreasonable at all. As a matter of fact, what does Jesus say elsewhere? He says, ask, it'll be given. Seek, you'll find. Knock, the door will be open. And that tells me that no matter where you live on this planet, if you're seeking him sincerely, you're going to find him. And if it means bringing a missionary to you, he will. If it means appearing to you in a vision or a dream, he will. If it means converting your witch doctor supernaturally into a Christian and having him teach you, he'll do it. And he's done all those things, by the way. I've heard stories of missionaries walking into remote villages where no one's ever been. And when he arrives, the chief of the village says, the big man, as they call him in Africa, in Zambia, the big man of the village says, oh, you're the one. The missionary's like, the what? The who? And the big man, the chief, the tribal leader will say, well, we were told in a dream, in a vision, series of them, that God was going to send us a man to tell us about his son, and that his son had made it possible for us to come to him. And we want to hear that story. We want you to tell us. And the missionary, when he recovers from, fainting, starts to share the gospel, and sometimes the whole village gets saved. And those things happen, and you say, wow. Well, what that tells you is that God is not restricted, nor is any man on the planet. If they seek him sincerely, they're going to find him no matter what their background is. Uh, and the other thing you have to keep in mind is we live in one of the most godless cultures in the universe right now. Greater Hartford is one of the least evangelical cities in the world, communities, I guess you could say, in the world. We have a lower percentage of people that would actually say they have a personal relationship with Christ than some unreached countries from a missiological standpoint. And yet we have more access. So the idea that this is the Aborigines tribesman is given a bum deal, a raw deal, it's unfair for him, forgets and ignores the reality that we have all kinds of access, we being Greater Connecticut people, and yet we ignore him, and yet we have turned from him, and yet most people don't even care to seek him. So access does not equal relationship. Lack of access does not preclude relationship when we look at it historically and biblically and so forth. So those are my thoughts on, well, you guys are just unfair. You say Jesus is the only way. The other thing I sometimes do, this was more with Christians who are wrestling with that, feeling guilty for saying it or thinking it. This is silly, but just work with me. Jim says, yeah, only one way into the tabernacle, right? And that's true. That's true in ancient Israel, huh? There was only one way to get into the tabernacle, through the door. Jesus is the door. He said that too, didn't he? But anyway, sometimes I'll say to Christians who are feeling guilty, and I know you're not, Leanne, but I encounter people who are more liberal, and they do get that sense of, oh my gosh, we can't say this. I'll say, pretend you're God for a moment. Put yourself in his shoes. You create the universe. You create the world. You create man. And you give him this most beautiful paradise to live in. And you spend time with him every day. And I say man, him, I'm talking about man and woman, Adam and Eve, right? You just love on them and bless them and hang out with them. And they basically tell you to take a flying leap, a long walk off a short pier, as they said. And so you back off, you let them have their way, and they bring death and chaos and evil and disease and even destruction to the planet itself. And you, at some point, wipe them out because they're so evil and corrupt, they're going to destroy themselves. So you save a remnant, wipe them out, and kind of do a restart button during the flood at Noah's time. And man goes right back to the same old, same old. So you confuse their languages to separate them, to keep them from gathering together, to multiply their evil too dramatically, too rapidly. But over time, over the centuries, they're going to go back to that same path. And then you decide, which you've already decided, millennia past, that you're going to come down and you're going to give yourself for them. You're going to cover their sin. You're going to take on all their crap and their garbage and their hatred and their evil. You're going to own it yourself as if you had done it, even though you're perfect and pure. You're going to own it. And so you do. You take on everything from everyone, of every race, color, creed, religious background, every, language. You take it on yourself. And you let them spit on you and beat you and insult you and tear you to shreds, literally ripping your body to pieces, throw you up on a cross, mock you and insult you and fight over your clothing as you gasp for breath and struggle to survive. And then when you die, they ram a spear in you and spill out all your blood and walk away saying, well, I guess he really wasn't the Son of God after all, huh? He claimed to be, but he obviously isn't because he's dead. But then you rise from the dead, you prove you were in fact who you said you were. You appear to hundreds and hundreds of people over a 40 or 50-day period, and some believe, despite all that. Some do, but some, I'd say despite of that, because of that, some do, but many don't believe. And you give time, you create a church, and you send people around the world. You give them a great commission, and you put churches on every continent and almost every language or major language, and you spread the word through the scripture that you preserve miraculously over 2,000 years. And then as the age is ending, and the time of God's favor is coming to a close, and you're about to come back and kind of, save those that have committed to you and wipe out everything else and create a new heaven and new earth based on a foundation of those that truly believe and that are in your image, so to speak, not just physically but spiritually, the image of Christ. As you're about to do all that, there's a group of people wandering around going, gee, I don't know. It's not really fair and not even reasonable to say there's only one way, that method that God just used, that taking on all sin for all men and being torn to shreds by his own will and choice, that wasn't quite enough. I mean, I think we need other paths. Maybe meditation, like the Buddhists, is a good path. Or maybe, self-flagellation, like certain Hindus, where they beat themselves and tear themselves up. Instead of letting Jesus do it, they do it themselves. That should be good enough. Or bowing towards Mecca 3 times a day and avoiding certain foods and, doing jihad if necessary. That's a good way. That's fair. What? If you were God, you'd gone through all that and taken all that agony and suffering and the pain of the emotional pain of Jesus hanging on the cross when he became sin and the Father turned his head and Jesus said, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? That wasn't enough. We needed other paths. That wasn't fair to the people who don't seek you. Au contraire, mon ami. That's absurd. He had every right, and he has every right in the world to say, this is the way, this is the truth, this is the life, and it's me. It's not some other path. It's not some other methodology or philosophy. It's me. And I think a reasonable person looking at the big picture would have to agree that God doesn't owe anyone on the planet another method, another means. And the only reason, by the way, that Christianity isn't everywhere is by man's own choice. Missionaries for centuries have tried to let Christianity be in every continent. The only reason it's not established in every continent is there are certain places where men have risen up against it, killed the missionaries, destroyed that, or blocked it, made it virtually impossible in some cases. But God has found a way nonetheless in most places on earth to let Christianity be there, sometimes incognito, but nonetheless available to anyone seeking it. The fastest growing place on the planet right now in terms of Christianity or places are places where it's illegal, where it's been blocked, where people have been put to death for sharing it. Places like China, places like certain Muslim nations in the Middle East. That's where we're seeing thousands of people a day converted. So the idea that it's not fair, it's not available, it's not accessible, and these poor peeps are being cast into hell because they didn't have a choice is not true. They always have a choice. If they seek him, they're going to find him. If they knock, the door's going to open. If they ask, it'll be given. And God is making a way every single day. So there you go. My thoughts on how can you say there's only one way? There's probably more to say on that too. Jim says we have to stay strong on this topic. Yes, amen. One door in the ark. That's right. Yeah. One way into the tabernacle, one door into the ark during the Noahic flood. All of that. God, and if you think about it, let's forget Christianity for a moment. Let's talk about democracy, freedom. Let's talk about capitalism. We believe, I hope, most of us in the audience, I certainly do, that as far as man's devised ways of governing himself and man's devised ways of doing business, that democracy, or I would say a representative republic, and free commerce in capitalism, those are the best ways man has ever come up with. But you can't get those easily in other countries, can you? I mean, some places they're not even legal, certainly not promoted. So is that unfair? Well, I guess it is at one level, but man can seek to overturn it, can't he? Man can seek to choose an alternative, can't he? Some do, don't they? Either by trying to come here or by changing things from within in their own countries. Or he can continue to pursue methods and means that have been proven to be false, like many in our country now are trying to pursue socialism, even though it's been proven a failure. We have a choice, don't we? We have free will. That does not mean God is unfair or that the truth is no longer the truth. Jim posted another thought here, but I can't. Oh, there it goes. Choice is what God gave us, the gift of the garden. That's right. Amen. Well, we're out of time. Good stuff, guys. Great Free-for-all Friday. I loved it. Hope you enjoyed it, too. Hey, tell your friends, neighbors, and strangers about Pondering. Let's get them to join us. Love our video. Share it on your timeline if you would. And have a great weekend. We'll be back next week, Monday morning, 7 a.m., bright and oily, for another episode of Pondering. All right? So stay in the Word, right? Keep praying, keep pondering, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.